If you don't do social media and or you want to be on both, join up on the email list. Ta-da, you are now in the club, you are official. You don't have dues or anything like that. When CG gets here, he does have raffles, tickets and stuff, so we ask that you sort of help donate by giving money if you feel generous, or you can partake in the raffle and donate that way, and you get a chance to win something. And all the monies that we do help pay for these rooms, it helps pay for our speakers, and we've got really good speakers tonight, pretty excited about that. Haven't seen the main speaker yet, but anyways, Mark will be here shortly. He's gonna do what CG's doing to me, give me heart palpitations. Usually we have a rolling slide thing, but it's not rolling because we're not in the regular room and he couldn't get my thing to work. But let me start from the beginning. We're here. I think you guys have all been gabbing, so that's kind of cool. This is our agenda for tonight. We're just going to be going through all these type of things, and you'll see how that goes. Talk about joining the club, social media person, membership dues, the raffle tickets, and I'll talk to you about the raffle when it's actually pretty much all here. We got a really nice raffle tonight. Okay. Hi, CG.
Uh-oh.
Oops.
Nice.
I was so excited to see you that my fingers were flipping and it just went all over the place. They have a real pretty decorative bees with a whole bunch of coffee cups. Come on in, CG. Get yourself settled down. You okay? Yeah. Okay. And then what's more important is we have a one free admission ticket to the Central Texas Beekeeping School training coming up on the 1st of April in Brenham, Texas. Very worthwhile to go. Very, very worthwhile. So it's a really nice thing. It's an all-day beekeeping, tons of topics, vendors, things to see. It's a really good, nice thing to have. So everybody should be participating in that one. So there's that.
That's a long way.
Yeah,
Pardon?
it's a long way.
It's a long ways, Brennan.
You know, anything you go outside our area is a long ways away. But there's a few things that I'll go for the Texas Beekeeping Conventions, and that's usually in Belton, Texas. Sometimes they come here, so I'll drive for that one. I'll go for this one. There's another one at College Station. There's not that many, so it's very hard. So you got to remember, we are in Texas, so you are going to
It's a
go.
big state.
If we don't win a certificate, what's the cost?
65?
65?
I think it was 65, I think, for admission. And it depends whether you're a TBA, Texas Beekeeping Association member or not. I don't, actually no, because it's not a TBA event. So I think it's 65 is what I think it is. We are looking for a person, because leadership is not going to arrange the dinners, okay? We've just got so many things to do. You can see as you're trying to talk to us, as we're trying to get these meetings set up, we just cannot arrange the dinner. So if you're a person that likes to go out and eat before the club meeting, we want you to do that. We love it when you all fellowship and stuff, but somebody else has to take the lead on that as far as organizing it and putting on the Facebook and sending an email saying we're going to eat at Billie Jean's, we're going to eat here, meet here at 5 o'clock. So if there's anybody interested, it's not a really hard thing to do. You just have to, you can just send the email to me. If you just get the email to me, I can post it for you. You just have to find the restaurant, make the coordination, and then we'll get it out. But for you all to step up as the club to do that one.
How often are your meetings? Once a month?
Every other. We meet every other month.
Okay.
Okay. On the odd months, and it's the 4th Wednesday, with the exception of the November one. We meet a week earlier because it's Thanksgiving week, that type of a thing. I'm still killing time. What time are we at?
6:21.
6:21. Okay, raffle tickets. This is CG. He's your treasurer. You can say hi to him a little bit. If you want to come buy raffle tickets, now would be a good time to step on down and buy raffle tickets and do that. And if you want to do that. Anybody else who came in later that has not purchased a bee or a queen that wants to purchase a bee and queen on the club nuke buy or queen bee, let me know and I'll have to pay for you as well. And my phone's floating back up this way. That's just a little fill-in killer time. I'm gonna go get my water. I don't know, Tommy.
Well, that ends. Because
it's fun, yeah.
No, you have to
Property
this is
already
how you introduce
tax
yourself.
exempt now, yeah, do the 5 years and then
You keep that head
in 5 years and then you can get it, or
5 years and then you get it, but you have to keep doing it.
right,
Yeah.
right, and then come inspect and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He was telling us a little bit about it. But I mean, we always have a lot of fruits, or not fruits, a lot of plants or flowers, and we're just starting a vegetable garden.
Oh, nice.
So we just want to help the bees anyway.
Sure.
So we thought, now we can get vegetable.
You only have to have three bees, 3 bee colonies. Yeah,
How many have you?
so you probably just got 3 still. I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, we'll find out. That's what we're taking our class for.
Yeah.
All that good stuff. Just trying to get into it, merge slowly.
Are interested. There's a couple that used to be tax assessors, I think, to the county, and then they quit doing that, and then all they do now is help people sign up for their tax exemptions.
Are they in Pipe Creek or just in Bandera
They
County?
are, they cover like 8 counties. I mean, they've been doing it their whole profession. I mean, it's kind of expensive. It's like $700 or something. But they will walk you through it, and they might do all of the correspondence with the county, and they file your application, and they make sure everything is just right. They tell you how to do everything. So they collected this club a couple of years ago, and maybe 2 years ago. It was packed because it's about ag exemption.
Right.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Oh yeah, you'll find it.
Tax consultants.
Huh.
Check that. That would be great.
No, you're fine. I'm trying to make a little more room.
As we're getting ready for the room, and once again we apologize, we did not know that they were moving us to the smaller room. This is Ethan West, for those of you who might have been seeing posts on Facebook or seeing things. And he has a survey of something he wants to pass out to you, so he's going to talk to you. I don't know what it's about.
It's just some general questions about the club. Like, I got a few questions on here, just like, what type of raffle items would you like to see? Just some basic fun stuff. A backhoe? Man, I don't know about that.
An auger.
Would you be willing to
on
fill one out?
Friday.
They're easy questions. Easy. There you go. Here you go. Appreciate it. I'm catching you flat-footed. Right when you're taking your jacket off, I switch you up.
I was trying to make it a little more sense. Trying
Monte
to.
and Mo, that's your first name? Yes, they're raffling off a...
Is it, so it's in your way right now?
I just asked. And let me say,
Yeah. I am tempted. Let me try. I mean, we're not. I mean, it's live, but it's not running. See what happens.
She is, but she's running late. She was with her helicopter in the truck, and we passed her on the way by. So she's headed back to
Are you feeding the think she's a real helicopter.
It's a real.
That's why I was asking you. Was she on there, okay?
It's a little bit late, so I don't know that that's it yet. So this is live. That's 10-second delay or something.
Oh, her name is Vaughn, so maybe that's where it's getting cross wire. But yeah, she's just a bee buddy.
Oh, no, that's not bad at all.
Only got 50.
I'm trying to keep that in the center. Oh, oh that's scary. I'm like, what the? That's funny.
He's right where? There?
Yes, please. Thank you. Can you back?
Probably do that.
Oh, the lady sitting here, you can have this one. This one's there. Somebody, the lady sitting there.
Hey, Linda, no plug on my top bars?
You have your own meeting in March that you get to do.
In March? Oh, that, yeah. That's
Standing room only.
I know. It's like, I don't know where they both are. I didn't get one.
How did you get past us? He's right here.
If there's some spaces in between you, we're going to pretend that we're on Southwest Airlines. You must shift to the left. We're going to sink the ship over so that the people coming in don't have to fall over. So everybody, there's more people going to come, so everybody move towards the wall. This is your airline pilot, whatever person. Not stewardess. Oh, that term's gone. It's like, you can't say secretary. I even think that's been replaced with something. I'm not sure. It's very nerve-wracking when your main speaker's not here. Just double checking, how you doing?
Did you come in?
Not a problem, because you go to the there's no rush. When you come in the building, it's fine.
He was a presenter.
Do you have things that you want somebody to put on? Okay, call me as soon as you get here, and I'll send something to us,
Hey, Richard.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. That's my brother sitting next to me.
and you'll see the sign.
Oh, hey.
Beginning of the land.
Okay, guys, it's 6:30. Can I have your attention? We are on. officially now. I'm military, I'm late. I'm gonna get demerits, I'm 2 minutes late. But that was our speaker who's driving almost through the gate, so I figured I had to do that. If you can find a seat the best you can, we'll try to see if we can find some more chairs. We have some stools. If you want to go up the stairway, you can go on this side.
They'll take it.
So the people on the... So,
I'm doing one standing and I'm standing.
okay, welcome. Are we on? We're doing better at getting on Facebook. My name is Linda Williams, and I'm the president of the club. And we have a full agenda today. We have an awful lot to cover. And once again, I'll apologize for the last time about the room change. I did not have anything to do with it. We are tight as sardines. Hopefully everybody took a shower and put deodorant on. If you didn't, well, no. Okay, so this is the first meeting of the year. This is awesome. I mean, look at all you people. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. And we are continuing to grow and to grow strong. So I'm pretty happy about that. And the fact that we see returning people and stuff, it means that we're meeting your needs somehow, somewhere, despite a little bit of unorganization here sometimes. Today we're going to start off with club elections. I would like that, I'm a president, and unless somebody knows otherwise, I had put it out 2 or 3 different times, nobody wanted to run. So if you want to run, raise your hand. Okay, all in favor of Linda Williams being the president? Okay, we're done. Okay, this is CG here.
I'll be happy to give it up to anybody that wants to join.
CG here has to handle all the money, okay? He is our treasurer. He is the raffle person. He is the one that has to figure out all our nukes and all that good kind of stuff. I put the same memo out. Nobody applied for him. All in favor of CG being the president, raise your hand and say aye.
I'm not president.
I just changed it. Trying to get listed. Treasurer. Okay. Richard, stand up. This is Richard LaCava. I'm not going to let him be president for a few more years, but then I'll let him there. He is our VP. Nobody has decided to send any money against him. Anybody want to run against him? All in favor, say? Aye. Okay, now we have something different. Christy, where are you? Stand up here. This is Christy Just. She's been with me on this committee here for a few years, and she has decided to abdicate? Abdicate? Is that the word? She's leaving us! Not physically, but she doesn't want that position anymore. I just don't understand why. 4 years, but she's done a great job trying to figure out as we do this club. We have one person who has stepped up to the pace. Ethan, raise your hand. This is Ethan Wise. Okay. Is there anybody else that wants to run for the secretary membership type thing? I'm not sure if secretary is the right term, but that's what we're calling him. We'll put a dress on him. All in favor of Ethan? Okay, club elections down, done. Thank you so much. Okay. Can you stop counting the money for a second? Come on over here. Twice a year, we have to just tell you that we have money. We didn't used to have money until last year, but because of the new the purchase buys and things like that, we now have money that we can pay for better quality speakers. Not that the other people were bad speakers, that was myself included, but you know, we can just do different things and different projects that we want to. CG, you want to give a quick update on finances?
We opened a bank account.
Yay!
We're running around 16,000. I wrote it down, but I left that notebook at home.
The 16,000 is...
That includes the bee nukes, $200 a nuke. Most, I think 8,000 of it is for bee nukes. Not counting queens. Now queens are in there too.
Yep.
So we were averaging about, before we started the sales, we were around...
Oh, yeah.
We had about 6 grand.
4,000, we were about 4,000 on it. If you have any interest in knowing more about club finances, we're not going to talk about it here. You can go see him when he has
And
his
I can
books.
really confuse you on it because I
But twice a year, he forgot got his paperwork, but in the future, he'll have just a little bit more information to you to make sure that we're not squandering the money and all that kind of, put it in my back pocket. If you saw my truck, you know that I'm not using it. Okay. The Club Nuke Buy, that is me, okay? So we are selling from Texas Bee Supply as the club group buy. We are selling a 5-frame nuke, and it's going to arrive on field day, and we'll tell you about field day in a little bit. And it is $200 per nuke. That's the queen and the hives. That is one way you can get your bees. We also have our other local vendors. Remember, they're out there. We have a list of them posted. As a leadership team, we made the decision that we only were going to sell 100 nukes for the club buy because we want to build a beekeeping community. We don't want to hog it all. We don't want to knock Bortranger and 8 Mile High and Ethan, all those vendors out there. We don't want to take away their business because it's part of our community. So we put a cap at 100 because we don't need to be greedy and get a ton of money for our club. You know, we have enough to do what we need to do. So we offered it to our club first, and I gave you the deadline of February 1st to have those ordered. After February 1st, I'm going to open it up to Alamo and a few other beekeeping clubs to see if we haven't met our 100. So you have to make up your mind if you're going to purchase on the Bee Club one. We will be selling, we will be taking cash tonight for the people who want to pay in by tonight. We've been getting the people on Venmo and Cash App. We're not taking personal checks. So that's what we're at. Before y'all came in, I was at 51. 51 were sold already. So we, you know, hopefully tonight we'll get pretty close to that 100 and everything like that between the February 1st. What questions do you have about the nukes?
So, you know, I told you we're going to be taking your class in March,
Yeah.
so we're just getting started in this. Will we have an opportunity to buy them then from you, or?
No, my suggestion is to buy 2 tonight, if you, I mean, or by February. Talk to me afterwards, and I'll have to give you your options.
You're not gonna get them until April anyway.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, they're not coming in till after the class. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about
I
that.
have a question. How much are the queens?
We'll get to that one in a
Does
second.
everybody know?
Not yet. We're not there yet. We're still talking about nukes. Okay. Any other questions about nukes? If you're brand new and you're not sure what I'm talking about, afterwards we'll talk.
Are the queens grown locally? Wait, are they,
We're not talking about queens. We're talking about
No,
nukes.
for the nukes.
Stay. Oh, for nukes.
So-
Oh, I'm sorry.
so are
Okay.
they
Yes, you
bringing,
can
are
ask.
they bringing the queens from California?
I am
you
not
know?
sure. Actually, no, they are local because they're bee supplied. It's either going to be the Golden Cornovian or the Texas 5000.
And they're bred here in Texas?
Yes, they're Texas. Yeah, they're not from up north. It's Texas Bee Supply.
Okay.
Yes, that's their brand. You know how Bee Weaver has their Bee Weaver bees and stuff. Yes, so they're Texas bred.
Okay.
Yeah, from that one. Bortranger and Jim Willingham, they get them from different. Bortranger might do a little bit. I'm not sure, but Dave gets his from someplace else. I mean, Jim does. And Ethan, where do you get yours from?
I ordered through the club.
The Wildflower.
Yeah.
The Wildflower.
And I've ordered from them for several years. They're pretty good queens.
Yeah. Okay. Richard, you want to step up and talk about the queen?
Yeah, I'll do it from here if that's okay. So I've got Linda B. We've got 54 queens that have been paid for. You said you were 51? So,
Yeah, but I have more.
I want to say tonight is the deadline. So you want to try and go through Venmo or pay cash or whatever you need to take care of the bees. Now what we're going to do is we are going to buy above what has been paid for. That might be 15, that might be 20, I don't know exactly yet. But at that point, it's first come, first served. That is, you don't have a reservation at that point. So tonight is the last night to reserve it. And the reason I say tonight is we want to get that cash over to our bank account, which takes a few days. February 1st is when they open it up for purchase. And from what Ethan has told me is everybody wants about the same time frame. So I'm going to be up midnight, April 30th, watching that thing and we're going to shoot for April 10th delivery. I might not get it. It might be April 11th. It may be 12th, maybe 13th. It just depends on how fast, I can purchase it. But that is the target. And again, as I said, we're going to buy a certain number, and beyond that, or beyond what's been reserved, or the difference between what was reserved and what we buy, we'll have a few extra. Not a lot, because we don't really want to hang on to that. That'll be first come, first serve. Okay?
Did you
I'm
tell me
sorry,
how will pickup work?
They're $38 each queen, by the way.
$38 each.
What were you asking?
The location and pickup will be determined based on once we know the time, and if you've ordered a queen, then you'll be notified of where and when the pickup should be. We really, 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 really don't want to queen bank your queens if at all possible. If we have to hold your bees for you because you're out of town or you just can't make it or something like that, we cannot guarantee. We will put them with our bees, but we cannot guarantee that they're, you know, we want them in your hands, not our hands, as fast as possible. You know, that type of a thing. Okay?
So they're Italian. They're VSH, Varroa sensitive, hygienic. They are coming from Southern California.
They're marked?
And they are marked.
Who's the queen breeder?
Wildflower Meadows.
Are they clipped?
No, they are not clipped.
Good.
We don't clip.
Any other questions?
Are they marked?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Annual field day. Okay, field day is a day for those people who are new, where usually at the end of April, the last weekend in April, the first weekend in May, we have sort of a fun day. Okay, it's a morning where you get free education, you get a meal, it's all about bees. We've had it in different spots. Hold on, that's our speaker. Did they find you yet? Oh, you're in the dining hall. They might be outside looking for you. Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna send a gentleman. Okay. Okay, just come through in the dining hall. When you're the clue's on the left, on the right, there's a little theater. Come into the theater. Movie theater, like I think there's a theater. Okay. Somebody's going to find you. Tom, go find him. He's an older man, like us, like the rest of us in the room here almost. So Field Day is a real fun event, a lot of education, and this is where you pick up your nukes, okay, your nukes, if you've ordered nucleus, this is where they arrive. Notice that the queen bees are not arriving on Field Day because we want our queens a little bit earlier than that for the people who know what they're doing with them. They want to get them in their hives sooner. So we'll be doing that. Now, Rick, stand up, Rick. I saw you in here someplace. He's standing. Oh, there you are, Rick. Rick, wave. Okay. Rick is a former and lifetime president of the Alamo Area Beekeepers Association, and he has stepped down, but he's been doing it for a heck of a long time. So he's done a wonderful job, and he was one of the people that started the field days. In our clubs, Alamo actually had the field day. They started it, and we sort of started to tag along in the past year, and we were helping them the year before that during the COVID years. So the new president is Rob Holliday, and he and I have been in contact with each other, and we're going over the logistics of Field Day, and we're revamping it a little bit based on changes of the different clubs and everything, and we will let you know where. Traditionally, we've had it here in Bandera, okay, we've had it mainly there. The Curvo Club, prior to us sort of getting as big as we are, we used to have just a pickup day where you just picked up your bees in Kerrville. The people from San Antonio for the past few years have been driving, ever since they've done Field Day, they've been driving all the way from San Antonio to Bandera, and they were sort of wondering if somehow we could maybe find something that's sort of more equally distanced. So that's what we'll be looking at, whether it's Pipe Creek or we're not sure yet. So that information will be coming. Wherever it is, it's probably going to be at the most an hour and a half for most people, unless you're way out there or like Tom down someplace south. So we'll get that information, but it typically is usually the first weekend in the last weekend in April, or the first weekend in May. So we'll get more information on that. Okay? So that's your field day, and that's where you will be picking up your nukes. Okay, we have this beautiful here. We're not raffling it off. Okay, Pete, stand up. Where are you, Pete? Okay, Pete. Pete has been very, very generous. Pete's been a member for about, what, a year now? About a year, but you've been around longer, because I remember us going out with Joe Bader, helping him with his managed bees and stuff like that, so he's been around a lot longer. He has generously donated this extractor to our club. So when all you first-time people think that you're gonna get honey that first year that you have bees, you're not gonna need this. Because you're not gonna get it in the first year. And all you people that think you're now in your second year and you're like, oh, we're really gonna get a lot of honey, you might get some. It depends on what the weather's gonna do. But we do have this. If you, they cost $400, $500, $600 depending on where you want to go with it. So by being a member of our club, which means you have to be either on the Facebook group or you have to be on an email list, you can borrow this. There's rules and stuff attached, and you have to sign your firstborn or at least your bank account or something to use it. But we do have it. It's a nice one. It holds 3 frames. So Pete, thank you so much for generously donating that to our club. And as we have I'm now going to move us on to our spotlight presenter. What we do, and we've been trying to do more and more of, we like to have our membership involved, so we actually come up to you and convince you and twist you and wine and dine you so that you'll come up and speak to us if you have anything to do with bees. And so I have Randy and Tara. Come on over. Where'd the other half go? He's coming. He's coming. Okay, I have to switch the thing, and these are what we call our spotlight presenters. So just give me a moment so I can get their presentation on. Oh, look at that, it's right there. Okay.
And the mic's on the table, Linda.
Oh, if you want to put your mic on, I know, you have to do it. Sorry, you can hold it, you don't have to do that. They made me do it, so you have to do it. Okay, okay, I am a Mac person, so where's the play? Right here? Okay, okay, okay. Left to right, you just keep, actually it's the right, that way. Okay, with further ado, I'll let them introduce themselves.
All right, so we were asked to present of what we've been doing with bees. I feel like we're still kind of new beekeepers. We've been doing it for about 4 years, so since 2019. And we run R&T Bee Ranch out in Pipe Creek, Texas. So a little bit about us. We're in Pipe Creek, Texas, which is a kind of in eastern Bandera County. We're about 9 miles west of Boerne. We've lived in that area for about 30 years, and we started keeping our bees in 2019. We were looking for ways to get ag valuation that worked with our land, and I'm really kind of a naturalist. I kind of like the plants that we have here, the environment we have here. So I really wanted something that would work with our goals for the land that we had. So we did a year of research. We joined the Alamo Area Beekeeping Club, and this club, we took several classes and joined several magazine bee journal things, and we decided to go ahead and get our first hive. But then once we started keeping bees, they were absolutely fascinating, and now I don't think we could imagine not doing bees. There's so much that you can learn from them, and so many different products that you can get from the hives.
It's an addiction.
Yeah.
It really is.
And they multiply. You start getting more of them. So what we do with our company is we're working on hill country honey production. So this is some of our honey that we got from this year before we put the labels on, with a view of our place and behind. And we also are doing hive leases for ag valuation for other people. We're mostly focusing on Van Dare and Kendall County, but we also have some in Helotes, so northwest Bexar County. So some of the things that we found that were helpful for honey production in our area and keeping healthy bees was to learn about our area, the plants in our area, because timing is so important in our area. It seems like when the bees are ready to go, they're ready to go and they're not waiting for you. So right now it's winter, so we're prepping equipment. We're trying to make sure that when the bees are ready to build up, we've got the extra supers ready, the frames are ready. That way we're ready when the bees are ready. Some of the things that we're watching are some of the plants and the other wildlife in our area. They kind of give us a clue for what's going on. And so that's kind of what I have here. Some of these pictures are pictures that I took of our bees on plants in and around our area. The stump plants up here on the right, they're a great plant during the summer dearth. They provide lots of pollen and nectar. So when we watch them, we can see what's happening.
What was the name of that plant again? I'm sorry.
Sotol,
Sotol, C-O-T.
S-O-T-O-L.
Thank you.
Most of the time it looks just like a plant that's kind of like yucca type plants until they put their stalks up. And then they put the flowers on top and then they're just buzzing with bees. I think a lot of people probably miss them because they're so high up on the flowers where they're at.
I think a lot of people actually get rid of sotols because they also have spines on their leaves. So it's really painful to walk through if you've ever had to walk through a field of them. But they produce really tall stalks and bees just go nuts for them.
And one of the other things that I found very helpful is taking notes from season to season, because then you can see what kind of plants, like so when we see certain plants, we start noticing the bees are doing certain things. And so that helps me prepare for the next year. Although so far, no 2 years have been the same.
There hasn't been a normal year yet.
Yeah. Somebody's like, is it a normal year? And I'm like, I'm not sure we've had a normal year yet.
This is normal.
Yeah, I think so. So some of the things that we've been looking at right now and seeing and taking note of, because we're kind of looking at our bees, trying to wonder what they are, what they're doing. I thought, when my notes said that about last week I should have mistletoe blooming, or that's what it was blooming last year. But I went out and it had already bloomed. So it all had fresh berries on it. I did see a few dandelions that are starting to bloom. I believe they provide some nectar for the bees. Not a whole bunch of them. And this is what my agarita bushes look like right now. They haven't quite put on their flowers, but they're almost going to. And for me, the agarita is kind of one that I look to because the bees usually start building up with their brood when the agaritas start blooming.
It provides a good nectar source for them, and I think they also get a little bit of pollen out of it. But that's generally whenever they start building up really fast. So in this area, we tend to have to support them whenever they start that. If, like us, you want to try to produce honey.
And splits. We also do try to do some splits. Okay, so one of the things that also was some about our management methods. When you first get started, there's so many different ways to keep bees. But one of the things is to learn how the bees work and to work with what the bees want to do. It was really helpful to look at a lot of different methods and to try them out for yourself. There's so much different equipment. One of the things that we did that really helped us, we saw a presentation at one of the beekeeper meetings from Randy Oakley. And he talked about a method for small operations, because when you're first beginning, you don't have a whole ton of equipment and a whole ton of frames. And one of the things that was really helpful in his presentation was making all the equipment interchangeable. So for us, we use all 8-frame deep boxes. That way, when they build wax on a frame in our honey super or our third box, if we need to, we can bring it down into the brood chamber box. So it's not like I'm up there saying, oh, I have this medium frame, but I really want to move it into the bottom box, but it doesn't quite fit, and then the bees built crazy comb. So when we did that, it made it so much easier for us to be able to make splits, because everything was interchangeable. We could move them around however we wanted to. And the 8-frame equipment was easier for me because it's not as heavy. The 10-frame deep box was so heavy that...
Yeah, it took both of us to lift a 10-frame deep full of honey. I mean, it was probably close to, between 80 and 100 pounds. And it's tough to lift up, especially if you try to get down into that bottom box to check the brood chamber. You move that honey super off in order to do your inspection, and it was just, we struggled to do it. So the eight frames are a good 30 pounds lighter, you know, if it's full of honey.
And you can still, when they're still really full of honey, they're still very heavy, but I could bring an extra box and just move them frame by frame as I have to until they're awake that I can move. But having them all interchangeable just made it so much easier for us. And I know there's a lot of different methods out there.
Makes it easier for rotating frames too, because you know the bees, once they start building brood on it, it kind of deteriorates the wax. And you don't want to leave it in there forever. So it really kind of has a lifespan. And generally, we've been retiring frames, particularly the brood frames, after about, I don't know, 3 to 4 years, which doesn't sound like a long time, but you see a 3 or 4 year old frame of brood, and it's pretty ugly, pretty nasty smelling. And most of our honey frames, they're, especially the ones that we pull off and extract the honey from, they've only had honey in it. We don't actually use the brood frames that have honey to extract to, you know, the bottle itself, which we think makes a little bit of a difference in the flavor of the honey.
So really when we put it all together, it comes down to having good nutrition for our bees, a good strong queen has helped, having the bees nice and healthy, so we do monitor for mites. Our swarm control measures, we generally have been trying to run, or we found for us, we like double deeps, just because we can swap boxes come spring, which will probably, our bees look like they're almost ready to do that in a few weeks. And that gives them a whole bunch of room on top. So generally in winter, or when they start fall in the bottom box, and they start eating up into the top box at the end of winter, and then the bottom box is like all this empty comb. So then we move that box on top, and they feel like they have all this space.
Plenty of room to grow.
Plenty of room to grow, and so that has worked for us. And then timing, when they're ready to go, one year we have found that they are ready to go. They're not going to say, oh, or is that super coming in next week? So having that timing down is what has really helped.
Yeah, the difference between a swarm and a honey harvest.
Sorry, could you share the mic? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. What I was saying was this: the difference between a swarm and a honey harvest can be about a week. You know, we saw last year one of our hives had built up faster than we had expected, and we had only, it looked like 2 or 3 boxes of bees, but they filled out an 8 frame deep. In 1 week, they built the wax, and they filled it with honey, and then sucked it down and left. Wow. And we'd seen the box full of honey, and we thought, oh, it's time for another box. Well, we didn't do it that afternoon. The next morning, half of that hive was gone.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun.
So some of the other things that we're working on, we love a lot of the products that come out of the hive. So we were able to produce some of our honey this year. And then we're also working towards making some vinegar with it. So if you take honey and then you make your honey wine or your mead, you can also turn that into vinegar. It has a really unique flavor. It's great in a vinaigrette. And then we're experimenting with some creamed honey. I think we'd like to do some hill country flavors. So we're trying agarita, prickly pear, and maybe some Texas red mulberry creamed honeys with that. But those are things that are in the works. So
that's all we got.
So yeah, you can check us out at our website or our Facebook, and that's all I have.
Tell them what your major accomplishment last year was.
Oh, our major accomplishment was we took our honey to the Texas Beekeeper Association convention, and we entered it, and it won first place in its division, so we were super excited.
Okay, what we're going to do right now, our next speaker is here. Okay, for you people that want to come on down, you can sit on the stairs, you can sit over here, or you can stand on the wall. I apologize. Who would have thought thought that we would have had 90 people in our meeting today. So please come on in and sit down and use the stairs and stuff like that. Please make yourself comfortable. I'm gonna have Mr. CG pull off 3 raffles while we're waiting for our next presenter to get himself all set up the way he wants to. So you wanna pull off the raffles? We're gonna have a really cool, cute little bee right down here called Be Happy. You can come on. So this is called, so pull on your numbers. We're gonna do the raffle. The raffle is one of the ways we make money for our club.
Last 4 is 5401. Last 4, 5401.
Somebody has to have it, doesn't it? Okay, there you go. You're such a good, he always buys like a million. He's good. Okay, now we have some beautiful honeycomb combinations of note cards and stuff, so hopefully this goes to the person that's supposed to go to, somebody who loves to write little cards and things like that.
5468. 5468. Somebody's got yours.
Okay, put your glasses on. There we go.
5468.
There we go. 5468. Thank you. This was our honey judge from last time. We want to make sure she doesn't cheat, you know? I don't want to start. No, come on. Let's see. I'm going to save that one for the last. Let me see how Mark's doing here. 1, 2, 3. How are we doing, Mark?
Just looking for the computer connection.
Oh, I can call the guy.
That's all right, found it.
You got it? Been doing this a long time. While we're waiting for him to finish, any immediate questions that I can answer? All right, questions. I might not be able to answer them, but we've got a room full of people, so somebody can come up with an answer.
So when we get our queens, how long are they okay to stay in the cage
Okay.
before we put them in the?
When you get your queen, if you can, obviously the best thing you want to do is get your new queens into your hives as soon as you can. Do not go and squish your queen in the morning before you come in to pick up your queen. Never kill your old queen until you have your queen standing right next to you in the hive. Lesson number 1, okay? And actually, I would just put that other queen away. Doesn't happen often, but I've had a queen fly away on me before. So I would just chuck that little queen there for a second, or maybe resell it to somebody in the club who might want it or something like that, depending on why you're queening. So when you get it, they're going to come in either a little plastic cage, they're going to come in a little wooden cage, and there's a little screen over it, or there's screens around it. You can take your finger and give them a drink because they've been flying through our mail system and everything. They're probably dehydrated and everything. Most of the times you'll find a queen and there'll be some attendants inside that cage also. So they'll feed her, the queen, and you'll put a little drop of water on your hand and you can just carefully tap it onto the screen so that they can get a drink. If you cannot get your queen into the hive right then and there, you want to take it home into your house, put it in a cupboard so the dogs, the kids, whatever can't get to it. And it's out of drafts and it's sort of in a dark spot. And you can just put it with the screen up and you can put it there and shut the door. Go ahead, everybody does it a little bit differently. I do twice a day. I don't give them honey, I just put the sugar water, I just put regular water on it if I'm gonna, have her there for about 24, 48 hours. After that, I might put a little dab of honey on it or something like that. Rick, do you do anything different? Well, you have a queen bank too, so. But if you weren't putting it in a queen bank, what would you do? He didn't hear me, he's hard of hearing. Ethan! He really is hard.
Put it in a cardboard shoebox, take a paper towel with some water in it, put some water in there in the paper towel to keep the air slightly moist, and put them in there with the lid slightly open so air can get in. And then every day that you don't put it there, you need to put 1 or 2 drops of honey and 1 or 2 drops of water on the outside of the cage.
And that's our guest.
And that will last for about 4 days, 5 days like that.
What you do with the mic?
What mites?
Oh, I have Mike. Mike. He's not there yet.
No, with the other mic.
Oh,
Did you lose it?
Tara,
No, you had it in your hand.
I put it down. This is the story of my life. My friend Ginny will attest to that. There we go. Okay, if you're gonna wanna keep your queen any longer, then you really need to do a queen bank. And we're not gonna talk about that right now, but thank you, Monica. Next question? No questions. Hi.
How old do you think the queens are that come with your initial nuke?
Okay, the queens that come with the nuke, I think it depends on who the vendor is, but most of them are, okay, they're from, they're probably being Texas Bee Supply.
6 months.
No, well, it either, I think they're doing, I'll have to ask Blake. If they're fall, I don't know if they're fall queens or the ones that made it this year. I will double check, because I didn't ask him that.
What was the question?
Okay, the question was, on the Texas Bee Supply, the nukes that we're getting with the club, how old are the queens? Okay, so the queens were either gonna be from last fall or early this spring. And we're not gonna talk about the debate of which is
These
which.
spring queens.
Three spring queens? Okay, you
That's why-
talked to them?
That's why you can't get them until.
Oh, that's right, you're right, they're, spring queens,
And then
yeah.
how long do you keep them? If, you know,
Okay,
she's living?
queens, how long do you keep a queen before you replace her? That's a beekeeping question that's from here to here, so I'm gonna give you a range, okay? Technically, they can live up to about 4 or 5 years, but you don't usually see that in traditional, he's gonna tell you something different than I do, because he's probably longer. But in most of us, we requeen them usually every 1 to 3 years. Why you requeen would be probably based on the attitude of your hive. If it's starting to get mean, spicy, hot, Africanized, obviously you have a responsibility, depending on where you live, to requeen for that. Production, I don't just automatically requeen my queen because it's a year. I'm gonna look at her production, okay, and where is she at? The young queens, they lay a lot faster. They're like teenage pregnancies, all that good kind of stuff. They just are very fertile and they just want to go and go. Okay, as you get into the advanced maternal age, you don't pop those eggs out as much as you used to, so you're slowing down. And obviously, the slower production you have, the higher chance that you have for having weaker hives. Also, your younger queens don't want to swarm as much. So depending on your season, everybody will develop different patterns. But I would say for the most part, usually what I have been seeing in our club members and stuff like that is from 1 to 2 years, okay? Some of them, people who want to do more natural beekeeping and they're not looking for honey production as much as they're just looking for pollination and they just want to help and enjoy the bees on their properties, they might keep them a little bit longer. But I will tell you, if you're raising bees in hill country, you want to err on doing it a little bit earlier, because even though you might want to keep them around longer because you're just doing that pollination and you're just enjoying them, you're really taking that chance on having a hive go south on you real fast and be weaker, and then you can't get a queen at the time that you need it, and then you're going to lose your hive because it's not strong enough. Did that answer your question? And there's probably 4 or 5 people who might tell you something different than what I just told you. But I'm the president, so I don't know. Next question?
When should we start looking at our hives every 2 weeks and start worried about swarming?
Okay. You know, that also goes along with our wonderful weather patterns, you know, because we haven't had normal weather patterns, and we know that this past year and going into this winter, really and truly, it's tough. The bees have never really had a winter yet, and there's no food out there. What's going to stimulate brood rearing, which is when you're worried about swarming and everything, is pollen. Okay, so we'll be hitting, you know, coming up after we pass that winter solstice and everything like that. They've already sort of started in their mind, in their body internally, starting to think about raising them. Once the pollen hits and they start to get a source of that, then they're going to start to raise the brood. If we get more rain, that's what's our limiting factor right now, is we don't really have a lot of rain right now to get those spring flowers up. But as soon as we get some rains and those flowers start to pop, then you better be checking your bees. You know, whether it's 1 to 2 weeks, I personally start my first deep hive inspection, and these guys will tell you when they start theirs. I'm starting a little bit earlier this year because we just had some rain, you know, and it's been warm enough. Typically, I would start mine at the latter part of February, and I make my decisions on whether I'm going to see what's going on with the brood rearing. And then I'm in pretty much every 2-week mode for me on my hives, you know, through March and through we get to April. After that, and the honey flow comes in and stuff, then your focus is not so much catching swarms, although they can have those. It's more like making sure I get the honey and things out. So probably you better by March be in your hives.
And what do you look for when you're checking them every 2 weeks?
Okay, that is not a question for today. That is a beekeeping class question. Because we have a whole presentation here. That's a little bit too long, but it is a great question. Where are you? You ready, Mark? Almost?
Yeah, there we go. I was looking for power. All taken.
What are you looking for? You want me to get that up or you got that up?
I'll put that up. Great.
Okay.
Time to change accent, isn't it?
I know.
Enough of Linda.
Okay, this is Mark the Kiewiet. Okay. I'm going to let him talk about that because he has an accent and he's really fun to look at.
Can you
And
give
he
him
needs
the
a
mic?
mic. And you need a mic not because we can't hear you. We need it because we're online.
Ah, all right.
Okay, so you can tuck it in and hold it, or you can attach it, or I'm not very good. I've dropped it 5 times already.
Set it down, leave
Or
it.
set it down.
Well, let me introduce myself initially, and then I'm going to ask you a question of what you want to hear tonight. So, I'm Mark the Kiewiet. I'm a rebel. I've been doing bees for about, here in the US for about 6 years, down in Texas. I started off initially with the Ag Life Vet Science group. Had a project with them, chose bees. In the first 2 months when I got bees, the first thing everybody said, well, what are you treating your bees with? And I looked at them really funny. I said, treating bees? I have no idea what you're talking about. They said, well, you've got to treat bees. I said, well, I come from Africa. We never treat our bees. We don't have a problem. What's the issue? And then I looked out for how do I keep bees in the US without having to treat them. Came across the Organic Beekeepers group led by Dee Lusby in Arizona. Spent a week with her on her ranch. Came back, never treated bees. My annual losses, about 1%. This year it might be about 2%, but that's my own fault. Don't have a problem. And those of you who talked about Africanized bees, there's the exit. That's what I farm. I farm the Texas feral bee because it is resistant to mites, it's resistant to foul brood. It keeps the moths at bay. I don't have to treat it. It's very productive, but it doesn't like dumb beekeepers. You go short on food and they just clear out. They don't stay. So commercial beekeepers don't like them because they abscond very quickly. But I do like them because they are tough, they're robust, they are productive. And you know, they get testy at times, but just like Italian bees do and Russian bees do, you learn to treat them differently to an ordinary honeybee. And so we'll get more into that. So, what do you guys want to hear from me?
Yell it out. What are you interested in?
Yes, ma'am.
You posted something a couple weeks ago on your Facebook page about a sugar patty, and I wondered about the recipe. Can you give us the recipe?
I can. All right, we'll include that. Later on, we'll do it. I have to stop towards the end and pull up the recipe. Yes, sir.
I want you to elaborate on how you treat your Texas feral bees and how you get around some of their defensiveness. Because I'm a believer too in the qualities of the Texas feral bee for all the things you just listed. And I just want you to extrapolate on how you manage their defensiveness and work them through the season to help them keep from absconding.
Okay, good. The bottom line is a good bee suit. I met a beekeeper up in Washington State. I'm trying to think of her name now. She's written a couple of books called The Silence Increase or something like that.
Sue Colby?
Pardon?
Sue Colby?
That's right. Not Sue, but her master, the lady who taught her. But yes, I know Sue. And when she did her training of her beekeepers, and when she goes into beehives, she makes everybody meditate for about 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes before they go in. And the purpose of that is not for the bees. The purpose is to calm the beekeeper down. So that when you go in, you're calm. Bees is an animal. It senses your fear, it senses your hesitation, it senses your nervous action, and then of course does something about it. So the secret of dealing with our feral bee here is you've got to be calm when you go into the hive. And then there's a couple other slides I'll bring up, I'll mention, that will help you do that. Thanks. Okay. Anything else, sir?
More? one of the topics I would be interested is the trapping of feral bees instead of buying them.
All right, so I'm going to break all my golden rules. Instead of having a nice slick presentation with this introduction, middle, and an end, we're going to chop and change to different to address your issues. So let's take the issue straight away. So our feral bee, as I said to you, is a bee that takes no nonsense. And so in order to trap them, your strategy for spring, middle of summer, and fall is different. So I get a lot of swarms in fall, but I use a totally different trap for it. So for spring and summer, if you want to catch bees, you need a trap that's at least 20 liters in size. 20 liter is a 10 frame Langstroth deep. It's a 20 liter. When you go to fall, you only want a 10 liter, which is a nuke size. And if you put a big one out in fall, they won't go in it. You put a small one out in spring, they won't go in it. So what I've found over time, and I happen to bring one, thank you. See if paying my dollars goes well. So there's my 10 frame deep on its side, because they like depth. They don't like shallow boards. Now there are beekeepers that catch swarms perfectly in shallow, in just a single flat box, all over. There are people here that will trap them in those paper mache pots on the side. You ever try to get comb out of the paper mache pots? Yeah, not worth it. So what I took is I took this, and in the top half are 5 frames. The bottom half is 5 frames. The top half frames are just standard deeps with comb on it. Most of them have got comb. There'll be one, which I don't have, and this one it will be a dark old comb, something we talked about from a brood box. Don't destroy them all, keep one, put one of those up top here. The rest partially built, or 1 or 2 empty ones. The frames in the bottom here are just frames. They have no foundation in them whatsoever. The bees will fill this up very quickly. They come and they go into it.
No foundation or no comb?
Both.
Okay, so it's
No foundation, no comb in the bottom frames. They're just the frame around, and you can put a bit of wire across if you want to. But the top ones all either have comb or they are foundation. I put them in at the edge of a vegetation. So at a bush rose or tree rose or garden rose, there needs to be an edge of vegetation there. And the bees will go in. They don't like it too hot. Well, this one caught bees in the fall. It was right out in the middle of the garden. I actually brought it back from an apiary to clean, strip and clean. Well, I didn't get the chance, the bees moved in. I've got some that were in the shade. In fact, my greenhouse is a great bee trap. I have bees moving to my greenhouse every year. Somehow they find a gap when they're in. So it doesn't matter if it's in the sun or in the shade. It seems to be the depth and the size that's important to them. And then for fall, it's just half the size, just a nuke size. Again, with 1 empty frame, and then the other 3 or 4 frames you've got in there need to have comb or foundation to help them out.
How do you get to the lower frames?
So when you come up and have a look, I have a metal rod in here that keeps the top frames. So I take the top frames out, I pull this rod out, and then the bottom frames just lift straight out. So I don't have to cut the frames. I have my standard beef space between the 2 sets of frames. So, because some of them, if the bees are built comb underneath, you've got to hold it up, you've got to cut it off, you've got to mount it into a frame. It's a lot of effort. My favorite beekeeper is Michael Bush. We know him. The laziest guy I know on earth, but boy, he got all the tricks in the trade. So I follow him diligently. Wall thickness, it doesn't seem to matter. I've tried thick wall, I've tried thin wall. Most of my bee boxes are made out of plywood that are around about 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, not 3/8, 3/16 inch wood. Doesn't seem to make any difference. As long as the top is insulated from the rain and moderately cool. So this has got a bit of plastic on the top to insulate it from the rain. And that's what I use.
Do you bait it?
So the hesitation, I don't know how to answer the question.
I didn't know if you heard me.
So I've tried swarm trap, I've tried swarm lure. I've not been successful with either of those. What I have done is I've taken the slum gum. Anybody know what that is? Okay, for those who don't know, when you wax back and you melt the wax in a water bath and you take off the wax at the top, the gunk that's left behind after taking the water off, we call that slum gum. Great for fertilizer in your garden. I take that while it's still slightly damp and I rub the inside of the box with that stuff. That is the best bee trap, or swarm lure that I can lay my hands on, and it's free.
Are you putting them up, elevating them, or are you putting them on the ground? Or both?
I'm a lazy beekeeper. I put it where it's easy for me to pick up. So some of them have been right on the ground, particularly in fall. In fall, almost all my swarm traps will be run on the grass, or on the dirt, or on the ground. Otherwise, the rest of them will be elevated slightly, so it's easy for me to pick up and look at. So all low level. I know CD talks about 15 feet, I think he said, or 20 feet off the ground.
Well, somewhere in there. Yep.
I've never had a recorded bee at that height in this area with our Africanized bee. All the bees I've caught have been about chest height or a bit lower.
What kind are you near, Brent?
San Antonio.
Oh,
So I've got apiaries from Petite all the way along the north of San Antonio around to Kingsbury. I've got apiaries spread all the way around there. I live in Shirts. The first 7 years in Shirts, I never saw a bee. But the last 2 years, we've been inundated with them, which is great.
Okay, once you catch a swarm, how long do you leave it in that box? And then what do you do with it after you caught it?
So once I've caught the swarm in here, I want them to stay there because the chances of them being Africanized is very high. If I disturb them too early, they're going to abscond. So I want them to start pulling out, drawing wax. I want them to start laying brood. Once they are laying brood and they're starting to put honey away in the cells, that's when I'll move them into a normal bee box. In my case, Langstroth. And then when I put them in, I'll put these 5 frames in the center with empty frames on the side. I happen to draw those at the bottom because that makes up the full 10 Langstroth. And then if it is all 10 frames that have, or 9 frames, if all 9 frames have got wax on it, then I'll put a second box on top. Because if they see this hive being full, they will abscond. They'll swarm very quickly. Any other questions on catching? Yes, sir.
Where do you put the entrance?
For that one. Right.
Sorry, I thought it was already facing you. The entrance is down the bottom there. So CD mentioned a 2 square inch circular hole. I've tried that and I've got some beautiful pictures that close that up. They don't like that 2 circular inch hole. I went for a straight horizontal one, which makes it a lot easier to machine anyway, to cut in the wood. It's about 3/4 of an inch high, just less than 3/4 inch high, and about 2 inches, approximately 2 to 3 inches long.
Oh.
So at the bottom, you can see the entrance. They seem to like that one the best. Any other questions? Since I'm throwing honey around. Honey the bees make depends on the flowers they're eating, the time of the year, and how old the honey is. So I'll get honey, so that's crystallized, but I'll get honey like that. In the same apiary, it'll come a little bit darker, and that's my full honey. The same apiary, same bees. Depends on the time of the year that I'm taking it off, and of course what they're eating. I brought these 2 along here just to show if any new people here. Crystallized honey, it's terrible. You've got to throw it away. Give it to me and I'll dispose of it. I just put it into the blender and reset it back to use cream honey. Perfectly great. There's nothing wrong. It's just filters out. You will. This one's kind. If you come up close, you'll see the crystals at the bottom here are lighter color than the honey at the top. It's actually there's 2 of the 4 sugar crystals that are actually separating out at different temperatures, different times. And there are times when I actually separate those out and sell them as different honeys because they've got totally different flavors. But the only problem with doing that is then each of these sugar molecules give you energy at different times, which is why honey, unlike sugar, if you take sugar or other sweeteners, You get a high, then you get a deep low. With honey, you don't. You get the molecule build up to the high and it stays like that. It's because the different sugar molecules will be absorbed at different rates in your body. So if you don't split the honey, you get that effect. If you do split the honey, you'll get the effect of the drop at the end of it.
Can you liquefy it again?
Yes. So you can liquefy it. There's some honeys, that one at the end there, that light color one, that took about 3 or 4 days to solidify after I pulled it out of the hive. Very quick. I've got honeys that are probably 8 years old and never solidified. So it depends on what flowers they're eating. To re-liquefy them, you heat them up. But you cannot go more than 119 degrees Fahrenheit. Once you go above that, you destroy the medicinal properties of the honey. So I think I have a slide in there showing a graph of some results of some research I'm doing at UTSA on medicinal honey. We got honey through the Texas Beekeepers Association, about 50 samples. Everybody says they were organic honeys, so we started analyzing this honey. First of all, is it pure honey? Then secondly, we started looking at its antibacterial, antiviral capabilities. There are some there that have 0. In fact, there were some that actually enhanced it. I wonder why. It's because the honey was heated above 119 degrees. So honey does take some time to re-solidify. If you stir it, it helps a lot. It'll re-solidify a lot quicker. So if I'm having to re-solidify honey, I'll put it in a water bath. I'll probably never go above about 90, just to be on the safe side. And I will stir it, and then within about 3 hours or 4 hours, it's liquefied again. And any of you guys who've got other experiences, please chip in. Because we've got to prove this point that you ask 2 beekeepers 1 question, you get 14 answers.
No microwave.
No microwave, no way. Any other questions?
Where we are in Mason, we get mesquite, bee brush, agarita, mistletoe, and wildflowers. Our honey won't solidify that quick in that 4-day period, but you leave it out for a couple, 3 weeks, it will slowly start to solidify, but it won't go solid as quickly as that example he brought up. Because it's just different things that we're getting versus a couple hours south. You know, that time difference, that jump in geography changes it up.
And what I've done when I've been selling my honey in the past, I put something on a little label on the side, because you have to start to educate your clients and the people that you're selling to, because like he said, they're going to throw it away and he's going to take it. So I have a thing on there saying if it does the solidify, that just shows that you've got some really good honey, and then I have the instructions on how to reheat it up so that it'll be fine for them. So part of your working relationship, if you're selling honey or doing something like that, is educating them about the different plants and the varieties.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any crystal?
So honey was certified based on the temperature. So if you hold it around, I think it's 55 to 65 degrees, somewhere around there, that's where it's really solidifies fast. And there's actually a list of flowers that the bees visit, and it tells you approximately what's the impact that has on solidification. Some flowers will give a faster solidification than others. All right, so I'm going to random through. You'll see there's not a flow to this presentation, but hopefully it'll stimulate questions, and please feel free to ask questions at any time. The most important thing that I've got on this slide here that I want you guys to think about is bees are part of an interactive system. They're not isolated on their own, just like flowers or dirt or soil or anything else like that. Nature is a system. And you interrupt on one of those aspects of the system, one of the variables in there, and everything goes wonky. So, how do I keep bees healthy? I let bees keep bees. I don't interfere very much in them. But one thing I have with new beekeepers is that they frequently want to go into the hive, which is great. I love the enthusiasm. But bees take the propolis and they create an atmosphere with that propolis in the hive. And when you take the lid off, that propolis evaporates. And it takes them about a week to regenerate that atmosphere. During that time, all sorts of viruses, bacteria, and things like fungi can go into the hive, and it's hot and it's moist and it's nutritious. And more new beekeepers kill hives because they're going too often. So one of the things I did to overcome that is I use top board or inner covers. which I think in Texas is an absolute must. This is not an option. It helps us control the moisture in the hive. But with this on the top, I can look inside through here to determine what's happening. I can look down the bottom to the center two frames to see whether they're drawing anything, what's going on. And if I happen to be feeding using frame feeders, which is what I do to, this hole is directly above the hole in the frame feeder. So I don't have to take the lid off, so I don't lose the atmosphere in the hive. If I really want to go any further, then I would go in there. Do you know what this hole's for, by the way? A few hands, hold it. Yeah, so that's what I do. It's for this. Anybody know what this is? I didn't for 5 years.
It's an entrance, it's a one-way.
It's a one-way entrance for the bees. So you can extract the bees from the hive or force the bees into the hive. It's a one-way entrance. The bees go in and they can't get out. So depending on which way you put it, in the center here, that's what the idea was. To get bees out of the hive. So that's what that is. It took me about 5 years to find out what it was. So bear in mind, everything is a system, and we want bees a system. How do you prevent, somebody mentioned wax moths or hive beetles? Have a strong hive. If you don't have a strong hive, you're susceptible to those things. You have a strong hive, they take care of themselves. So, you know, what is a strong hive? If I look at these frames that I've got in here, choose one that I'm going to destroy. How many bees on this frame? Sorry, I missed that?
Zero.
Zero. Ah, you get the prize. If it's the European honeybee, which is what I call the large bee, because it was actually upsized. It was upsized in the 1840s by some Belgians. And then in the US, we had an upsized program in the 1940s to try and make the bee bigger, because we are, oh, bigger is better. We made all our farm animals bigger. The only problem is the morphology of the bee did not change. So we're trying to fly a jumbo jet with a Piper Cub engine on it. That can't go very far. The standard size, cell size, 5.4 millimeters, our standard cell size. You get about 3,500 bees on this frame. If you go to our Texas feral bee, anybody know what size our Texas feral bee is?
Small.
Pretty small. It's between, depending on what area you're in, it's between 4.5 and 4.7 millimeters. You get 7,000 bees on this. There's no chance that those wax moths and hive beetles can survive on here. The bees are there. They can keep out. A lot of hives die because there's too much open space in the hive. And that's why they die. So you know, when you do expand, make sure it's the right time and the bees need it and they can cover those frames. All right, so I'm a master naturalist. I enjoy nature. I like all sorts of insects. I use bees as the canary to tell me what's going on in the environment, particularly with our native bees. I'm very interested in our different type of native bee species, but we don't see them very often. They're difficult to monitor because they hibernate for most of the year. But they imitate, our honeybee imitates the life that they have. So if our honeybees are battling, I know the native bees are battling. So if you're a man of interest, when we started the native bee project at UT in Austin, at that stage, we thought there was around between 600 and 700 different bee species in Texas. Today, that number is 1,200. We have found 400 more bees in the last couple of years. So there are a lot of them around. When I teach my bee class, I teach the beekeepers to observe and query everything that goes on. So that's the way you learn. Internet is interesting. It has a lot of numbers, whatever you like to call it, data points, but do they make sense and are they actually valid for our area? Bees live in microclimates. And I can have two apiaries within half a mile of each other and I treat them totally differently, different times, different things, because different things are happening in that area. So I say to the bees, here's a picture of the bees. What can you tell me is going on in that hive?
Raising brood.
They're bringing pollen in. So that means what?
Raising brood.
They're raising brood. So there's a queen in there, and she's laying because they need the pollen.
Correct.
So when I aim to open, I know I've got an active queen in there. Right, that's just honey boasting about the honey pouring. So let's see what else is interesting here, because I can bore you for hours on this subject.
You smoke your hives? Do you use smoke?
Do I use smoke? Whenever I go into my apiary, I will have the smoker lit, just in case. Do I use smoke on the bees? As seldom as possible. And there's actually a slide that talks about that. You don't have to smoke them all the time. Depends on what's happening in the hive, what their attitude is at a particular time. And a lot of the time, just having the smoker just simmering in the apiary is enough to keep the bees calm. And we'll come back to that question towards the end as the reason why I do that. So this is an apiary out in Arizona desert. It's right on the ground, despite what other beekeepers tell you have to elevate it. It's right on the ground in the full sun. Boxes are falling apart, the bees love it.
That's at that lady's place in Tucson.
Just south of Tucson.
Yeah, I've been there.
You have, you lucky fellow.
I watch her on YouTube, or she used to do YouTube stuff.
Yeah. So throughout my time of beekeeping, I've had this constant battle, not one because I'm outspoken, with those who treat and those who don't treat. And if, my saying is, if we spend as much money trying to prove that small cell bees don't work, and rather use that money to find out why they do work, we'll be much further down the line. So when Varroa came out around the world, there were several countries, in fact there were 4 countries that said, we are not going to treat whatsoever, we're going to let nature take its course. Those countries today, mite-free, no problems. 25, 30 years later, we in the US are still treating. In fact, we're still having to develop new vaccines or new treatments. I'll show you a slide later on what oxalic acid does to your bees. I saw some micrographs at A&M. Won't touch that stuff. So let's try and work out why, in my case, small bees, which will be the same for you guys, work. So do you guys know any species of bees in the world that are naturally resistant to mites?
Asian honeybee?
Asian is one, yes. Come on. Africa, South Africa, totally resistant to them. There's actually a graph, I'll show you another graph with a couple of them. And if you look at them and you ask them, well, why are those bees like that? They're all less than 4.9 millimeter in body size. That's the magic number. When I get to that slide, somebody remind me to tell you why that is so important. Dee Lasby was my mentor. This gentleman also knows her. She's been beekeeping for years. She's about 3rd generation beekeeping. She set up all the beekeeping for the US military, for our border control. She was contracted by the FDA in 1970 to find out what was happening with colony collapse. And some of the important things come out, well, we know insecticides. Fungicides as well, because guess what, how bread's made? Using funguses. So we have that around, of course it kills the bacteria, the fungus that's busy decomposing the pollen. They have no nutrition, they die. But FDA is great. You can use this insecticide because the lethal dosage, the LD's number is 50. It only has a 50% concentration of what's needed to kill a bee. And we all say, thank you very much, it's so wonderful. How many plants does a bee visit? 50% on this plant, 50% on that plant, 50%. By that stage, you're at 200% the lethal dosage. Then it takes it back to the hive, and the hive's made out of wax. Wax is a fatty acid. It's a perfect receptor for insecticide. And that's why they die. Monocropping, another big issue with bees. Bees have to have a variety of food. It's like feeding your kids fries for their whole life. They're not going to grow up very well, are they? Same with bees. They need a variety of food. So when you have monocropping, the bees don't have access to other types of food in their radius of flying. They're going to be on a bad basis. GMOs, there's a farmer that I was friendly with between Marion and McQueenie. He grew sunflowers, fantastic sunflowers in the early years, and then one year he came to me and he said, my sunflower crop is a disaster. Why? What's happened? Where are the bees? And I said, well, the bees are still here because I've got apiaries around here, so I know they're here. What did you do different? No, I did nothing differently. After chatting to him, and turns out he swapped from his normal seed supply to GMO side. Bees don't like them. They had a problem. Chemicals, we talked about that. Upsizing. So the bigger the bee, the colder the climate for living. And I'll get to that topic later on, show you with a map of why that's important to us. Oh, well, there we are. There's the map. So we're here in Texas. This color, that indicates The size of the bee that we should have around here, 4.7 to 4.9, is what our bee size should be. I actually find in my area is 4.5 to 4.7. But we rather bring in bees from Europe. What color is Europe? Blue. What blue? It says 5.1 is actually 5.3, but we're taking a colder climate bee, putting it into a hot climate. We want to know why they don't survive without a lot of management. We should be bringing bees in from Sahara or Northern Africa, Southern Africa, Asia. Those are the places we should be bringing bees in if we really want to, because those are the ones that will naturally survive in our area. But instead of paying for them, just catch them. Our feral bee is really good.
Question. So as many bees as many hives is out there and they're swarming, how do you know you're not just catching somebody's swarm from last week as opposed to true feral bees?
Well, if the bee is black, you know it's not a feral bee. Body size. So you look at the cell size. Cell size is easy to look at than a body size is. So yes, there are a lot of bees out. So if a European honeybee...
Let me rephrase that question. How are we going to know?
Cell size.
If you allow that swarm to build its own comb, measure the cell size of the comb, and you will see. So what you will find generally, here's the normal 5.4 millimeter in this area. There's the 4.5 in that area. So this came out of a swarm I caught. You can see the different cell size. So that's what they were originally. Left to nature, they'll go down there. So it's estimated it takes about 5 years for them to shrink back down to normal size. I speed that up by using foundation that is already at that size. That's my frames all this color. So all right. I heard a slight comment over here. We're going to have to this one. But yes, that does man legs. This is a fully drawn plastic 4.9 millimeter cell frame. I use that for swarms that are battling or hives that are battling, and so they don't have enough wax or enough food to pull frame. I'll put one already drawn in there, and they can come out. This is a bit of wax with it's just less than a 4.3 millimeter bee. So when you later on, you can come have a look at it. When you're looking at this one, you will notice that the cells all got torn edges on it because this hive was robbed out. And a very easy way of seeing where the hive's robbed out is look at the edges of the cell. If they're jagged, you know they've been robbed.
So can we effectively buy frames that have the smaller cell and put it in, and
Yes.
just take the chances, and they'll start to trim down from generation to generation?
So you can, yes, you can. So naturally, they say it's between 5 and 10 years to cut. I think it's actually said 10, but there's a book called Back to. I'll have to look it up. Come here. It's one of Dusby's books where she actually puts in there's an article. You can go online. You can pick it up online as well. The article's free. How to regress your bees to back, and she does it over a 2-year period. And there's quite a lot of bee loss when that happened. Well, I started, but being a typical male, I couldn't wait 2 years. So after a year, I said to hell with this. I just threw out all the big comb, put the small comb in, and hope for the best. And I was lucky. So now when I catch a swarm, they go on small cells straight away. What happens is they'll find, they'll adapt. If their queen is the large size queen, they will kick her out after about 2 months and replace her with a new queen that's smaller. And
So
the only problem is
where are we getting the smaller cell frames?
You can get the Man Lake, Detente, Blue Sky. Those are the ones. I've got the white one there that's fully drawn from Blue Sky. Detente's got chemical-free.
Detente is daytime.
Sorry, daytime. They gave you the wax bottom, which was just fine, or you get to the plastic one from Man Lake. Simpsons is another one that also sells it.
I'm not sure they knew what monoculture is. I'm not sure they know. Yeah.
So monoculture is when the field only has one single crop in it. And usually with the commercial farmers, they will have acre upon acre of the same vegetation in there. So it's one single source of plant. Bees need a variety of plants. And talking about that, if you're planting at home for your bees or other pollinators, don't put one plant in of that flower and then someone else another plant of that flower. Bees will not go to it. It costs them more energy to fly to that flower to see whether it's got nectar and pollen in it than they're going to get out of it. So if you're going to plant for pollinators, plant in clumps of several plants in a clump. Then they will go to it. It's worth their while to do it. Thanks. Right, we talked about that. So other things I think are important to think about is we talked about attitude of the bees. So anybody heard of housel positioning?
Oh, turning it toward the east. The sun comes up. Is that what you're talking about?
No. So that's a good start. I'll give you credit for speaking out. Thank you. So, bees make cells on either side of the frame, and their cells are about a 15-degree to the horizontal. The cells at the bottom are rhomboids, so they don't fit one behind the other. They're offset. And when they're offset and you look through the cells, if I pick up, I need a bright light for this, but I'll pick this up and I look through it with the sun behind or a flashlight behind, you will see at the bottom of that cell, you're either going to see a peace sign, at least a Y, or you're going to see a peace sign. Hauser was a beekeeper in Florida. He found that bees put their frames in a very specific order in the hive. When you stand outside the hive, so here's my hive, I'm looking to the center of the hive, I pull the frame up. If I pull the frame up to the center and I look through this frame, I should see a Y. So the 5 frames on this side are faced this way, and then on the other side, they're turned around. And that's why in all my frames, you'll see there's the Y marked out, so I know where the Y is. So this one says the Y is facing this way, so this frame will go in on this side of the hive this way, and on the other side it'll be that way. So you take a hive that is angry, aggressive, and you have a look at the frames in there, you'll probably find they're all mixed up. Change them to the right sequence, according to Housel, and the whole temperament drops.
Something I'd like to, your thoughts on would be talking about the limestone, but what about top bar hives, which were used in West Africa?
So top bar, you'll see the same thing. If you take this comb here, it's slightly offset, but the Y is still there, and the peace sign is still there. You look through an ordinary piece of comb. So for a top bar, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
When you take your frames out, so what I do with the top bars that I've got is I've marked them all the way down the side, which way direction. And in my top bar, they all just face the same way. I'm too lazy to turn them around because I'm moving the bees up and down in the top bar.
Yeah.
So the next thing I learned about was screen bottom boards. So I was told in Texas we are so hot, you've got to provide a lot of circulation for the bees. You've got to put screen bottom boards in because then the larvae, the mites will fall through and then they go to the ground and destroyed. The same with the hive beetle, the larvae will fall through the screen at the bottom. So I spent 2 years making these screen bottom boards, and my hives didn't perform. So one day I happened to run out of those screen bottom boards. I just put the bees in an ordinary solid bottom board next to it, next to another one, and its productivity was more than double. Well, that's interesting. Let's look at more about this. And about that time, I picked up a book called Happy Beekeeping, Beekeeping with a Smile, written by a Russian. And in there he talks about temperatures and hive and orientation. He also there's another one called Conservative Beekeeping. It's a free PDF on the internet because it was written last century. They talk about the thermodynamics in the hive. The bees like it hot. They do not exchange air with the outside. There's very little air moving in and out of the hive. There's gas exchange where oxygen and carbon dioxide moves through, but the air actually stays moderately still. So if you blow your smoke at the entrance, most of it doesn't even go into the hive. And so I'm looking at that and I thought, well, that makes sense. So I took a couple of hives, and every second hive I took out the screen bottom board and I put a solid bottom board at the bottom. The productivity went up. So I've taken them all out. I've got a whole pile of them at home. One of these days I'll sell them. But screen bottom boards are more of a menace to me than they're not. Now, if you are treating your bees and you have the big European honeybee, maybe it's something you need to consider, that it does affect the productivity of the hive. Shade versus sun. The bees, the bees can tolerate temperatures about 96 degrees, maybe 97, no more than that inside the hive. Your hive beetles can't do more than 91. So my hives are in the full sun in the morning and noon and afternoon shade. That way the temperature in the hive is slightly elevated higher than what the bees will normally keep it. The hive beetles don't like it and they leave. So some of you might have seen these red plexiglass lids. They're quite popular in the Georgias and the Florida area. And what they say is it's the red light that keeps the hive beetles away. It's not the red light at all. So in fact, because it's a plastic dome on top of your hive, it actually increases the temperature in the hive. It's the heat that are driving the hive beetles out. Color of box.
How are you measuring temperature inside? Is that a or any kind of an active practice where people are measuring the temperature inside hives?
You can buy strips for about $1 or $2. They're probably $2 today. That you can push into the hive, and it measures humidity and temperature in the hive. And some of the more advanced ones will actually measure activity in them. So you can measure it that way. In those days, I did actually have thermocouples inside the hive measuring temperature. So, color of bees, bee boxes, does it really matter? Well, it matters in two ways. One is if you have a white bee box out in the field, you've just doubled your chance of that bee box being stolen. And we know theft is up. So that's not a good idea. Secondly, a white box theoretically is going to be cooler than a brown or a dark box. The bees like the heat, so as you'll see mine here are got that one, that sort of color. What I do is I treat them with a product called Eco, which is a powder you buy it online from Amazon. It's a lot cheaper than buying it through any of the bee stores. It's an organic product that converts the lignite in the wood to an iron oxide format, and it lasts, they say, for a lifetime. So my hives, I've had it out on my hives now for 6 years out there without a problem. So I rather go to a darker color. The hives are not so obvious, and actually bees prefer it.
What was the name of that?
It's called Eco, E-C-O.
Yes.
There's another product called Valhalla or something like that. Same similar sort of idea, different make. They're about the same price. I've just used Eco all the time, it's easier.
Will it color over a white box, or does it have to
No.
be it has to be fresh?
And do your boxes first. You look on it, you'll find some people, if you go on the internet, you'll see some people who do it. You want to make your boxes first and then dip it in.
And you can dip the whole box in. This is going to be on the inside as well as the outside, not just on the outside like you have with paint. You do cater to different colors, but I just keep it natural. It's all about cost. Then I have heat control. So the reason why I want afternoon shade on my bees is I want one side of the hive to be cooler than the other side. And if you open up some old boxes, you'll see that bees generally have varnished one side and not the other if you don't move them around. And the reason for that is they blow the hot, moist air in the hive over the cooler side, and that causes the moisture to precipitate out. That provides water inside the hive, and it provides cooling for the hive. So if I happen to be in full sun and I don't have an afternoon shade, I always lean a piece of wood or something against one side, particularly the west side, because that's the worst side, to give them that coolness. I have this is an old slide. I see it. Cutouts after June do not survive. Yes, they don't, unless you worry about temperature. You suck up bees in a bee vacuum, or you transport them in your car. Each bee is putting out about a quarter watt of heat. You've got a couple thousand bees. There's a couple kilowatts of heat being generated inside that hive or in the vacuum. And if you don't cool that, they're going to fry themselves. So from June onwards, I'm using air conditioning, or I've actually got a bee box now that has an extractor fan in it that sucks the heat out so they don't overheat when I'm transporting them after I've brought them out or cut them out. Africanized bees, I mentioned earlier on, not a problem. All my hives are Africanized, I'm pretty sure about it. I've not tested for them, but I'm pretty sure. I do a lot of education for young kids in the 4-H program. I'm taking kids from the age of 5 onwards in there, not a problem. You've got to know when to go in and when not to go in. So you've heard some old beekeepers say, you go at the side of your bee and you tap it. and you listen to the pitch of the bees. If that pitch stays constant, it's fine, go in. If that pitch goes up, fine guys, we'll leave you, come back tomorrow morning, see what you like tomorrow. So the Africanized bee, there are times of the year they can get very aggressive. They get aggressive when there's a shortage of food and when you have high pressure changes. That's when they get really aggressive. Then all I do is I switch to doing them at night. Do them at night, it's not a problem. As long as you don't have one of these artificial red light flashlights, because they let through ultraviolet light, and bees see ultraviolet beautifully, you become a lovely target. It's got to be a true ultraviolet light. So LED lights, they give off UV, even when you can't see it. So you've got to I use a filter that I got out of a telescope. I put that red in front of the flashlight, and then I can go in at night and work on them. Small cell, yes, we're at hive beetles, wax moths and hive beetles are undertakers. They're not the cause of a failure. Yes, sir?
And with those Africanized bees, like, do they bother livestock? Anything like that? Machinery bothers them, right?
So do Africanized bees bother livestock? So the two animals that I will not keep close to one of my hives are horses and pigs. Nobody else seems to matter too much. Chickens don't bother them, sheep don't bother them, donkeys don't bother them, but the horses they don't like for some reason, and pigs they don't like. So those two, I will never tether them near where the bees are. There's a slide coming up what to do when you're around bees, and we'll explain more of it then. So these hive beetles and wax moths, if you have a strong hive, you don't have a problem, so keep the hive strong. So I think somebody earlier on was talking about how many boxes they have on the hives. My experience here in Texas is I need at least 2 boxes on my hives. Now bear in mind, my hives are all scattered from about 2 hours drive from one to the other. And so I can't visit them on a regular basis. Every 4 weeks or 6 weeks I'm there. It's probably not often enough in spring. So I've got to make sure that they survive on their own. If they're going into winter and they're less than 2 boxes, then I'll bring them close to home to nursemaid them through winter. 3 boxes, great, no problem, don't even worry about a 3 box. 4 boxes, great. 5 boxes getting a bit big. So my hives that are 5 and 6 boxes deep, I will try and reduce the number of boxes on that before I go into winter. Balanced diet is essential for the bees. It's not just about carbohydrates, which is your nectar or sugar water, it's also about pollen. You have to have pollen in there. The queen looks at the ratio of pollen and nectar coming in to determine whether she's going to start laying or not. So you've got to watch pollen. My bees are bringing in pollen now. I have not got a clue where it's coming from. But I also noticed that their brood is low. So either they're anticipating another good freeze coming up, or otherwise they're not bringing in enough. So I don't feed bees unless I have to. I'm not going to let a beehive starve. So if I'm good enough and I don't take off too much honey the previous year, they've got enough honey on the hive, which is about 8 frames full. 80 pounds of honey for the winter. That's usually enough. If they're less than that, then I'm going to nursemaid them and I watch them. So those that I have to watch at the moment are getting pollen and pollen patties and carbohydrates. Moisture control. Moisture is the biggest enemy in hives here in Texas. If you start getting moisture dripping around the hives, you're going to get funguses in there, and that will kill the bees. So that's why I've got the inner cover on top there, because what happens is the hot moist air goes through the center hole, it hits the roof. At night that roof is cooler and it liquefies, it drips down on top of the inner cover, it doesn't drip back down into the hive. And there's an internal source of water for the bees. Queens, there was some comment about queens. So I noticed commercial queens were originally, when I started, lasted about 2 years. We're probably down to about, according to Gretchen, about 6 months. All my queens now are all naturally pollinated, naturally fertilized local queens. They last about 6-7 years. They're going to be replaced by the hive when the hive knows it needs to be replaced, rather than me having to work out when it happens. So I don't re-queen, I just let them go. If it's got a temperament problem, then I look and find out why have I got a temperament problem. Is it lack of food? Is it something in the environment that's disrupting them? Or what is the issue? And I try and address that rather than just train the queen. The belief is that the queen controls the genetics. There's more and more literature out there showing that is not the case. As we probably all know, she doesn't rule in the hive. She's not the boss. It's the drones that control the genetics. Anybody know why? It's because the drone has a single strand of DNA. And as a result of that, the drone can suppress or switch on different genes to react to the environment. Which is one of the reasons they believe the bees have been around since the dinosaur days and survived and will continue to survive, is because within 2 generations they can suppress a particular gene or enhance a gene as needed. So your drones are really important for the genetics of your hive.
So you can put a commercial queen in with feral hive?
Yes, you can. She won't last.
Okay, well, I mean.
But yeah, they'll let her breed. They'll let her lay eggs, and after a couple of months they'll replace her.
So how do you find a feral queen? How do you replace a queen?
I don't. The bees do it themselves. The bees know long before I do that there's a queen problem.
Okay.
And the feral bee will then go do something about it. Once in a while they don't, for some reason or the other, and then I lose that hive. And if I see the hive is queenless and I see there's no brood in it, then what do? I either probably combine it with another hive, so I don't lose the bees. Any questions so far?
How do you split your hives if you don't have queens?
People always ask questions that trip me up.
You told me that. They're going to ask you that.
Most of my splits are walk-away splits. So I will take a strong hive, I'll create a nuke out of that with at least 2 frames of brood, 1 frame of honey, 1 frame will make some part honey, part pollen, and 1 empty frame. And I make that and I put it down and I walk away. And as long as I've got young eggs in there, they will draw their own queen. And that works about 95% of the time. I do lose a few, but not very many that way. If I am in an environment where somebody was talking to me earlier on about the availability of drones for mating of queens, yes, that is an issue. So I've tried to position my hives that one hive is no more than 5 miles away from the other hive so they can share drones. If I am in a problem with that, then I will put a queen in there. So you make the hive queenless for 2 days. I will spray the queen with a little bit of sugar water with some essential oils on that, or bee happy mixture, and put her in. And most of the time they'll accept her for a while and she'll breed, and then once she's got lots of brood going through, they will replace her. So talk about bee happy. Or Be Healthy, man-made product. This is Be Healthy homemade. You can find the recipe online. It works really, really well. So I put that in all the foods that I put in the hives. And somebody said, do I use smoke all the time? No, sometimes I'll just use a calming spray, which is that diluted with some sugar water, and just spray that around, and the bees are busy focusing on that and leave me alone.
How are you diluting that?
With sugar water, 1-to-1 sugar water solution. Okay. So I use, if I'm using it as a spray, I use 4 tablespoons in a gallon, and I use that as a spray.
What is the, okay, one of the projects my brother and I have this year is setting up a queen yard, and our initial thought was 3 bee yards, from 1 bee yard to the next, mile difference, and have them sequentially, so covering 2 miles total. You mentioned a drone within 5 miles. What is the effective distance for a drone congregation area to be saturated with drones?
All right, so I mentioned to you with a bit of a joke that our European honeybee is the jumbo jet, running by a Piper engine. They have a range, depends on who you look at, what information. They talk about between 0.5 mile and 0.8 of a mile range of flying. Further than that, they cannot carry enough food to justify the energy they put into it. That's what the literature says. I don't farm this, I don't worry about too much about it. Which is why you've got to have your second hive within that range. So your drones will move out, and they're going to find a congregation area somewhere, which is usually a dip in the ground or a dip in the vegetation. They will hover around that sort of area. So if you have it 1 mile apart, that means 0.5 mile, they should be able to match, but there's a 360-degree radius around where those drones could be, so your chance of matching is very low. You might be super lucky, but there's a chance of low. So if I'm using European honeybees, I would like to keep my hives around about 0.5 mile apart, my apiaries. That way I've got a higher chance of the queens finding the drones. So on the Texas feral bee, it has a range of between 8 and 10 miles. So that all my apiaries are about 10 miles apart.
So in our case, we're putting it in a river bend, so they're more so forming a triangle, and their distance apart is about
That's great.
3/4 of a mile.
That should work pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah. Advantage small cell, they live longer because they're smaller. You don't waste money on treatments, they fly further, they've got high density on the frames, which helps you with disease control. They are productive. You don't need to requeen because they're going to requeen themselves, but they do not tolerate people that are rough. If you bump a lot or are fast or breathe heavily, they're going to react to you. So you've got to be really calm when you're dealing with them. No bumping, no dropping of things. Casual, go in, deliberately do something and come out. And then you don't have a problem with them. If you're afraid of them,
I'm so sorry, because he's so fascinating, but we have a few other things that I had to give him, Chris.
afraid of them, don't go into them. So,
I didn't see it.
and bees do remember. So they do remember a rough beekeeper. So, you know, no chance on that. A lot of people rotate boxes in spring. Why? Bees travel up for the heat. You're rotating, you're taking a hot box, putting it down where it's cold. They want the brood box to be empty, they want the honey at the top. Why are you changing it around? Some people put queen screens in them. Why? The queen wants to go up where it's hot, not go down the bottom where it's cold. She's not going to go into the honey because she can't lay her eggs there because it's full of honey. If you're a commercial beekeeper, sure, use queen because you're going to take a whole box off. You don't even look at it until it goes through the machine. As a hobbyist or a sideliner, I'm taking frame out at a time and I'm looking. Yeah, full of honey, fully happy, at least 90% capped, I'll use it. Less than 90% capped, I'm not going to use it because my moisture content is going to be high. Thickness of hive bodies. So I've got hives that have gone through winter of less than 1/4 inch. Most of my, up until 2 years ago, my hives were all the standard 3/8 of an inch. Why 3/8 of an inch? Because that's the standard wood that's available to us. So we 3/8 of an inch. But I kept on looking at this thermal issue. And particularly, I was influenced a lot by the Russians and how thick they have their hives. Then, you know, people talked about how heavy hive boxes are. So I said, right, what do we do for that? Well, what about polystyrene boxes? So here's an 1.5 inch polystyrene box. Very, very light, great thermal characteristics. So you've got a 10 frame Langstroth, you put your bees in there, you'll find the last two, the outside frames are hardly ever drawn. You put them in this one, they draw 10 frames. They love the thicker wood. So I put this in, it's nice, this is about 8 years old. It did got nailed by wax moths, you see the holes in it. So the next question is, where do I get my lumber from? Because it's getting more and more expensive. I go to home building sites, you go and you talk to the building manager, you look in there, to a can in the back there, you'll find a whole lot of lumber. But most of it is 2 inch. 2 inch, great, more better thermal. So there's a 2 inch one. All right, it's heavy. So, but then I'm not picking this full of honey, I'm taking a frame out at a time. The bees love it. The wax moths don't do much in here at all. It gives me good thermal insulation both in summer and winter, and the bees draw all 10 frames. We've talked about genetics. We'll skip the genetics. Where do you want to get bees from? Bees from where they are where they tolerate mites. So there, the blue dots are where bees are naturally found that tolerate mites. Europe was not on there. We know about that. We talked about drones. Water is really important for bees. You know, bees have water carriers in their colony. Bees, their specific task is just to carry water.
We have a lot of bees in our, we don't have hives yet, we're looking into it. We have a lot of bees that come to our pool and drink the water from our pool because we have a waterfall. Is that bad for them? There's chlorine in it.
No, but they're going because they can smell the chlorine. And you obviously, when the bees came there after the swimming pool was there. If you have a water source for bees, before you put the pool in, then I'll go to that water source. They go to the first water source they find, and that becomes the standard water source. So putting chlorine or putting salt in it, which is basically chlorine again, is one way to encourage them to move to a particular spot for water. I will put in algae and fungus into water. That's another way to attract them to a water bath. So no, it doesn't do any harm to them. Bees' eyesight, we know they see ultraviolet and not red. So there's some plants that we see as one color, blue, yellow, and then when the bees see it with the red dot in the middle and white. There's a lemon flower, in fact taken last week. That's how we see it. That's how the bees see it. And those of you the modern cell phones, the new cell phones, have got a color change in it to make sure the color is right in it. The 3 eyes on top of the bee, look at the different color that the sun produces. The color of the sun in the morning is different to the noon, is different to the afternoon. They tell time that way, using those 3 eyes. Different bees, our native bees, have customized themselves to a particular plant species. So there's a symbiotic relationship. Certain of our native bees will only pollinate certain native flowers. You kill those flowers, the bees die. You kill the bees, the flower dies. And then if the flower happens to miss that year, the bees don't come out that year. Do you know why we got a squash bee? Because it feeds off the squash. Do you know why it feeds off the squash? Because squash plants will have early flowers. They come up and dorm. So the bees decided in order to get that nectar, they've got to wake up earlier. So squash bees wake up a lot earlier than other bees. Keep areas in your garden or your farm or your ranch where you don't till, because 85% of our bees actually burrow underground. They've got nests underground and not upwards. That's just different samples of bees. We'll get past that. I want to get towards the end. We were told that there's no bees in Africa before the Europeans came. Another political BI, whatever 4-letter word goes after that. The Mayans were farming bees, in fact the stingless bee. They were farming honey long before we ever came to this continent. There were bees here all the time. There weren't the European honeybee, but there were bees here that produced honey that the locals farmed for the medication side of the honey rather than for the sweetness of the honey. Lots of different types of bees. That's my Africanized bee. There's another little bee on the same flower. Are bees changing their range? Yes, they are. The brown-belted bumblebee used to be, range was that top graph. They've now moved into Texas through Houston, and we're even getting them in San Antonio, which they never were there originally. We know that, we know that, we know that. Another interesting fact, people always say bees create 6-sided cells. No, they don't. They create circular cells. There we are, circular. But with the surface tension of the wax, as it dries, it pulls itself into a hexagonal shape. Gee, Mark, I wish you hadn't come. Velcro was established by the bees to hold their 2 wings together so they got enough lift to fly. Bees have 2 sets of muscles in the thorax, vertical, horizontal muscles, and they pull those muscles and they bend the whole bone structure of their exoskeleton to make the wings flap. There are actually no muscles attached to the wing. That's how they fly. So the reason why I don't use smoke on the bees, because their breathing tubes, their trachea here, are minute. Our smoke has tar in it. The tar clogs it up. They can't breathe. You reduce their lifespan. So I try not to use smoke if I can avoid it. The temperature of the bees, queen extruders, we don't want that. Talks about bee. So let's have a little bit of fun. I enjoy doing a little fun with my bees. So one thing, bees in Texas are short of water. So what I've done is I know that the bees see ultraviolet light, so some dull golf pigs. I put fluorescent light paint on it, put this in the garden, and the dew in the morning or when I'm watering the garden, a bit of water goes in there, and that's not water from during the day. So, a little fun thing to do. What else can I tell you that I've got here? That lady was talking about this sugar candy. I used to use just plain sugar on top of the hives, not as a powder because the bees took it out of the hive. I actually mixed a little bit of water with it. I now mix the Bee Healthy. I put a a tablespoon of this in, and I also put pollen. So if I don't have normal pollen, I use the pollen, the ultramarine pollen from Man Lake, and then I put a tablespoon of that in, a pound of, I forget the exact recipe, it's pollen, it's sugar, it's very little water, and it's be healthy. And I make these, they break pretty easily, but they love them. They annihilate this when they get the opportunity. I put this on the top board, right on the top of the hive. It absorbs moisture, so it helps keep moisture control during winter. And that's how I feed them in winter, because I don't want moisture to be in there.
So do you mean that you put it on that inner cover?
Yes.
Okay.
On the top of the inner cover.
Okay.
If I'm putting in pollen patties, they'll go on top of the frames next to where the brood is. And pollen patties, they like them very moist, so I use quite a bit of oil in them. But I take the paper off the pollen patty because the hive beetles lay under the paper and the bees can't get to them. It's extracting honey, I'll get to you now. That's my favorite extractor for decapping. It's quick, it's easy, it runs all the top, takes a very thin layer of wax off, it actually levels the frame as well. So that's what I use 99% of the time. If it doesn't work well on old wax clogs it. New wax works fine. If I've got old wax, then I just use this roller. The gentleman in the back, you had a question?
Other than knotworm, is there any concern of toxic honey from anything in our area?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Other than knotworm, is there anything, any plants that we should be concerned about for toxic honey in this area?
Rhododendrons. But bear one thing in mind, the bees will not voluntarily go to it. They know it's not right for them. And what's not right for them is not right for us either. So I've got a lot of mountain laurel near one of my apiaries. The bees don't touch it. Okay.
How often do you feed your bees in the winter?
I go into the last full inspection I'll do will be in October usually, and I look at how many frames of honey I've got on there. If there's 8 frames of honey, I don't need to look at them again until end of February, March time period. If I've got less than that, I'll probably go in December, depending on how hot or cold it is, and have a quick look. I just look through the top, and then I'll feed them if they are short, and again I'll go in towards the end of January, beginning of February, do the same thing. That's all. Yes, ma'am.
This time of year, should you be pollen feeding your bees?
Normally the answer is no.
No?
No, but the bees are pulling in pollen, so they're asking for it. So yes, I have started putting pollen in the hives. The advantage is the bees, by putting pollen in, you encourage them to start to lay brood.
No, I'm just talking about a pollen feeder.
Oh, pollen feeder? Not externally. The only pollen I'll put into, I take a pollen patty, cut off an inch of it, and that goes into a hive.
Okay, I'm gonna stop us. I'm a bad person. We can listen to him forever, but there are some people that have some things that have to do, and we still have a few things to do. So everybody's gonna pay attention, okay? I'm gonna send CG, and the people who are buying queens and nukes, you're gonna go and get in a line up here, okay? And with your money in the form that I gave you. If you did not get a form and you're buying queens or nukes, you'll see me in a second before anybody moves. So that's a line, so you're just gonna go there. You should have it filled out. You can split it in half if you want to, because remember the top and the bottom while you're standing in line. He's gonna initial both of them, take your money, and then you can go, okay? For the other people, you can go when I give you permission. Okay, that's in there, that's in there. We're gonna do the raffle, we're gonna line the people up. Anybody who wants to stay after and ask us some questions, you can. Anybody wants to go and is not buying links and stuff, you can go. Just don't trample everybody down. And then the people will line up there. And then if you did a survey for Ethan, please make sure that you just put it on this table. I also wanted to let you know that we have tons of magazines that several people have bought and everything. And they're for swapping. So as you read magazines, bring them back, but you're more than welcome to come up here and take some of these things home with you.
I don't want mine back in the Man Lake catalog there. So help yourself, I don't want to carry them home.
Okay, so.
Thank
Do
you.
you show your, Mark, do you show your PowerPoint?
I can do so.
If you want it. Yeah, he's on the East, Facebook, Bees on the East. He's the moderator for that one.
Right.
So, oh yeah.
Put their phone numbers on this in case the queens come and the bees.
No, we got it.
Right.
Actually, okay, just because when you're buying the bees on this form and we can't read your sloppy writing, you're gonna put your telephone number on it. Okay, and make sure that CG keeps the one with the telephone number. How's that sound?
Make sure I go.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna do 2 real quick raffles. One, we're gonna do the pretty coffee cup, we're gonna 3. We're gonna do the coffee cup raffles?
If you win one, you owe me.
5540. 5540. Come on, somebody's got
Okay, Pete got it. Okay, Pete, it's down here. This is the surprise bag. There is something in it. It's a really cool cooler bag with some bees and stuff. You get a treat inside.
5493. 5493.
No? Next.
No.
You got it?